In Europe, in 1950, there were no free market think tanks in Europe. And in fact, we go on through here, we then get one in West Germany in 1953, another one in 55, and we get the IEA established in London in 1957. Years go by, and we have a group that's established in Milan in the mid-60s, and of course we have the Libertarian Alliance in London, and then we go on. Not much happens until the mid-1970s, where we begin to get the Smith Institute, London Centre for Policy Studies, to grow has been established in Sweden, so we go on. We then have the Thatcher Reagan era, and the mutant virus carries on. Mutants that we all are. We then get through to 1989. What was interesting, because this research was done by the Stockholm Network about a year ago. They were actually trying to track just the free market think tank movement. Some of these groups are libertarian, some are free market conservative, but basically people who are in the business of putting forward free market ideas. What was interesting was that this group in Eastern Europe was actually established a little bit before the Berlin Wall came out, that they were liberated from communism. So that was a big surprise to us. We go on, and what's really interesting, this is the point I want to make here, is that from the mid-90s to today, that movement has in fact doubled in a decade. Okay? Now, so I'm not describing blogs here, I'm not describing libertarian or free market academics or whatever. I'm just looking at the free market think tank movement. I'm not looking at little groups of people, who kind of coalesce around the Putney debate in my mum and dad's house, or French libertarians who once a month in a French religion. Just looking at institutions where there's some kind of budget. They believe in the free market, they often have an office, a couple of employees, and they do events and publications, etc. What I think is interesting about that presentation is it shows that there is a growth. Certainly, these institutions in our movement is part of the free market movement. On the back of that, exactly a year ago, the Stockholm Network wanted to do some research into what those groups were doing. We hear about the IEA, Centre for Policy Studies, or the Smith Institute, or whatever. We hear about Tim Ryan Sweden or CNA Rossington. But how many people do they employ? How many media hits do these people get? Give us some basic numbers. And we did not, to be honest with you, we didn't actually have the money of the Stockholm Network to survey all 120 free market think tanks in Europe. But we did have sufficient resources to survey 60% of that membership. And the research was conducted by Populous, a professional coal company. And there were some surprises for us in this. Okay, I'm going to go through this very quickly because I'm just introducing a background to the state of the real core of the study, which is the retail. Okay, we know that in 2005, these people produced about 600 publications. They hosted 600 major events, not things like debates, but I mean major events. They obtained about 8,000 media hits, and they attracted a total of 22.5 million website visitors. We could round those numbers up, therefore, because that's kind of 60% of the movement. Lots of publications. Here's kind of the rate of how the number of those institutions has grown over the years. You can see the table there. established since 2000, very into hibernate. Right. Would you like to see why that is hibernation? Well, I'll simply talk because I actually know this thing, okay? So what it shows, what the poll I was going to show you shows, is that, no, because there are 12 presentations that have to come up, is that actually if you re-weight the poll, we believe that there are about 12,000 high-quality media hits as a result of the free market think tanks in Europe. I don't mean, an article on a blog. I don't mean something in the Scunthorpe Gazette. I do mean a column in the Times of London mentioning an IEA publication, or something in Le Monde by Institut Économique Molinari in Paris and Brussels, or I mean in Frankfurt, Allgemeine Zeitung in Germany. So reasonably significant and weighty media hits. It's back. I'm going to forget it. I'm just going to tell you because I know what the data is. It shows that a majority of these think tanks, if they do work in anything, they're arguing for reductions in tax. Intriguingly, one of the areas that they work on, but they work relatively little on, is the environment. They work on taxation, they work on arguments of free trade. Things like the debate on intellectual property or the environment are way down the subject list. One of the questions we had at the Stockholm Network is maybe, as the environment debate becomes more prominent, so maybe that will grow in stature in the number of publications and media gets generated, etc. The overwhelming majority, 98%, of these institutions are funded by individuals, corporations, foundations, whatever. Only about 2% of them get any kind of state funding, and invariably they tend to be from the German-speaking world. Wolfgang Müller, who was here yesterday from IUF, that's the major. It's brand new. I think it's less than 18 months old. I think IUF is the first truly independent free market think tank in Germany. Not a Stiftung, it doesn't get a grant from the government. But, let me give one caveat to this research. There was one group we did not include in the poll. And that's a group in Spain called Libertarian Digital. Gabriel Calzada is involved in it. Gabriel, I think, spoke here last year. Gabriel sent me an email this week, and he just said, Tim, I'd like to update you on what we're doing. Basically what he said was we've now got, in the Libertarian movement in Spain, the licenses to run, I think, 6 or 8 regional television channels. And we've appealed to the movement, and we've raised 5 million euros in the Spanish-speaking world. Libertarian Digital, last month, I was told, had 28 million web hits. And according to Alexa.com, it is one of the top 10 Spanish-speaking websites in the world. And there are 300 million Spanish speakers on this planet. If we had Gabrielle's group involved in this survey, then we wouldn't have had 22.5 million web hits, or it was, we would have had goodness knows how many. So that's one thing we discovered. But the point I want to make is this before I hand over. There's something going on in the free market think tank group. The graphs are up. The people who were really doing some amazing work are the people who are invariably at the cutting edge of the technology. The people who are using, websites, blogs, podcasting, integrating technologies, all of which, you know me, I have a clue about half the time. no wonder it collapsed. The computer knew what it was doing. I'll turn off. What's so exciting about all this technology is, of course, back in the days of the IA's establishment, when to get a think tank working, you had to have an office, as they did in Belgravia, in Hobart Place, and wear suits and all the rest of it. A lot of these technologies are, of course, changing that terrain. And most importantly, it's bringing down the barriers of entry into the political or policy debate. Just as I mentioned the word debate, policy there, Paul, doesn't mean necessarily just see it in those narrow terms. No, it's just, but last time I did a speech release, you used the word policy, and surely we're in battle of ideas, etc. But the barriers of entry are coming right down. And you see in this country, people, Perry and Zanet's data having a huge impact. So my conclusion is that not only are there good things happening in these free market think tanks in Europe, not only is their impact growing, but this new technology is really exciting. And in Spain, we're seeing some just incredible developments. And the numbers attached are just enormous. So it's on the basis of that Sean and I had invited Helen Disney to take you through some of her work and the data of the Stockholm Network. She's my boss there and really a colleague. But to use this research and this data as a backdrop to really introducing Jackie and Antoine, who understand this world and who in many ways are prophets of what is to come. So it's with that that I hand over to Jackie, and as she introduces herself briefly and tells us what she does, the computer hates me, so yeah. I'll put it up, okay?
Prophet of what is to come. No pressure. Just to give you some background on me and what I do, I come from the marketing world for my sins. And about 6 years ago, started finding out about these things called blogs, and was very intrigued that you could just cheaply, or for no money whatsoever, you could self-publish. You could basically, and you could find like-minded people who were publishing things, or people who you disagreed with, and you could argue with endlessly, and just, at the time, I thought it was a waste of time, but it's ended up standing in good stead. Earlier this year, I founded the Engagement Alliance, which is basically trying to promote the idea of reciprocal value in free markets, so that companies can learn how to use social media, as it's called, for reciprocal value for shareholders, for customers, for employees, and sort of, in a sort of subversive way, trying to push free market ideals through to people online who don't understand that what they're seeing a lot online are actually free market concepts in action. So, you've probably heard about Web 2.0, which is, as buzzwords do, is now annoying everybody who first originally started using it. 4 characteristics of Web 2.0 technologies, it's called. This is in contrast to the first boom of the internet, which was a boom, then a bust, and everyone's sort of now saying, is this a new bubble that's coming upon us, because everyone's talking about all of this stuff. Web 2.0, very cheap, both for users. You can use these technologies for free often, or for very little cost, and for people who are building it. In terms of the costs of infrastructure, equipment, bandwidth, personnel, who are often now very distributed around the world. Sometimes people working together have never even met face to face. And it's often because of these new technologies that they can do this. I think the stats I saw was that during the first boom of the internet, it cost $3 million to build and launch an online company. And now the average is $100,000 to build and launch an online company. So you can see that it's gotten much cheaper for everyone to do these things. More open, the code's more open in terms of the actual geek stuff behind these sites, behind these properties, other people can look and see how it was built and try to improve upon it. So you have, in terms of, for instance, blogging software, open code blogging software that a company will put out there, and then all of their users can go off, they're more technical users, go off, look at the code, and develop their own sort of add-ons for the technology. So they're actually putting something out there, and people are adding on to it and creating more value for their product. It's faster. The uptake of broadband is huge now. So not only is it faster for people to use this stuff, but it's faster to get it out in the first place. And it's inherently individualist, which I'll get into later. But one thing I just want to mention is that these technologies will go through. During things like the tsunami that hit Boxing Day a couple years ago, Hurricane Katrina, people were using these technologies to do things that the government or governments couldn't do for them. And that point wasn't lost on them, but I think it really needs to be hit home to people, just how much people can actually do for themselves without any state involvement, which I think is something that isn't actually being emphasized enough. And these are some of the various logos of Web 2.0 companies that you may have seen around. I'll just go through some of the ones that are more important. First of all, blogging. And this is a picture I took from Flickr, which is a photo blogging site. But these are statistics from Technorati, which is a company that actually tracks blogs. They don't track all the blogs in the world, but of the ones they do track, as of October, more than 57 million blogs being tracked by Technorati. 100,000 new blogs created every day. And 55% of all of these blogs are active. And by active, that means they've been updated at least once in the last 3 months. The blogosphere, as it's called, all the blogs that are out there, is doubling in size approximately every 230 days. So this is, this is not dribs and drabs. This is quite a lot of growth. And one interesting factoid from the Technorati research, they do this sort of every 3 months or so, is that Farsi, they track what languages are being used. Farsi has moved into the top 10 languages in the blogosphere for the first time. And this is believed to be because of all the debate online about what's happening in the Middle East, the Hezbollah-Israel conflict, all this sort of stuff. And it's just sort of illustrative of how much blogs are used to debate whatever the issues that they are. This is a cartoon I like because it kind of represents how a lot of people think of blogs and what people actually blog about. But I think it's good because the point I like to stress is the fact that it doesn't matter if most people, if 90% of the people out there blogging are blogging about all this stuff, it doesn't actually matter. It's like saying that, we shouldn't be involved in books because 90% of the books out there are crap. It's just, there's lots of crap out there, but there's also a lot of good stuff. This is an example of corporate blogs. Lots of companies are now jumping on the bandwagon. Some of them are doing a very good job, but some of them, a quote, the guy in the cartoon has a quote where he said, watching Madison Avenue advertising types jump on this bandwagon is like watching a middle-aged man in a wine bar hitting on every girl in the place. I mean, they really think that they know what they're doing. Boeing's been very successful with their blogging. This is a guy who works for Boeing in terms of promoting their, this is the kind of stuff that aviation geeks, and I assume there are a few in here, really like. It's irrelevant to me, but it's relevant to somebody. It's a niche. It's like a specialist publication that you don't have to pay to have to print it in the magazine. This is Jamie Oliver's blog, where this is an example of how he's used his blog to really push his healthy school dinners agenda, which has been very effective for him. And the blog has been a major component of him doing that. And the Adamson Institute blog, which probably all of you have seen before or read. And I know they've had very, very good success in terms of getting more media hits as a result of the blog and helping them to do what they were doing anyway, but in a more efficient, fast way. Podcasting. Now this is, everyone knows what an iPod is. The size of almost like a credit card now, you can carry it around with you. And that's kind of the point. I mean, sometimes people think of podcasting as being, well, it's just internet radio. What's the big deal? We've always had that. You've always been able to download a sound file, or there have always been internet radio stations. The difference is, it's portable. You can take it with you. You listen to it on your own terms, where you want to, when you want to. It's a huge difference between something being streamed, and you've got to be sitting in front of your computer at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night if you want to listen to this, and being able to have it downloaded straight to your iPod, take it with you on the train to work, listen to it if you like. It's also extremely inexpensive for people to get into this, to the point where really all you need is a cheap little headset, which you can get at a computer fair for £2 when it comes down to it. And it's very easy to distribute this stuff to large networks, which also enhances its reach. And again, as with blogs, you have the whole the question of, you might prefer the term user-generated content. But the fact is the users now are the producers. So the lines are not just blurred, they're completely obliterated. This is an example of how one company is actually using podcasting to promote their company, but in a very subtle way. BMW has turned to some famous writers and asked them to write some audio short stories. And anybody can download these from the BMW website. These stories don't mention BMW anywhere in them, but it's just sort of a nice time. People like to listen to audiobooks in their car. We'll make this available to people, and it's a very it's an example of a company that's doing something right with this technology. The Cato Institute, who haven't podcasted since May, this is to be believed, but they were doing it every day, which may have been why this stuff is a bit manic. Video blogging and photo blogging. I just went on YouTube. You've all probably heard of YouTube, especially now they've been acquired by Google. This is a very good example of a company that was started by a few college friends at a university, bootstrapped, as they say, which is they got money from their savings, they borrowed from their parents to start this company, and didn't even bother going to venture capitalists, and have been able to just create a cultural phenomenon of it. And I went on YouTube and found some libertarian examples of libertarian content on there. This is a clip from the States, from a news program. And I don't think this is the Libertarian Party, but Libertarian in general, perspective on taxis. The New Zealand Libertarian Party, one of their adverts that they had, during the election, it was a rough cut election ad. So, and you can see on there how many times they've been viewed, and people can rate them. This is another similar to YouTube called Flip TV. Yeah, it's pretty niche to have libertarian stuff on there anyway, but libertarian in Latvian. Maybe you get more niche than that, but I don't know how I go there. And this is an example of Flickr. It's a photo sharing site, photo blogging. I just put the keyword libertarian into Flickr, and this is one of the photos that came up, which I thought was quite a good one. And this is, again, you can join this for free. There's a limit on how many pictures, how much bandwidth you can use if you're not paying. But I think it's $20 a year, and you can upload some unlimited pictures. So, this site was acquired by Yahoo, who are now using it. But I think this is it's a good example of how, another example of how companies are trying to accept this. A year ago, CBS, the TV network in the States, was fighting very hard to keep clips of their TV shows off of YouTube, off of these video sharing sites. It's stealing our IP and damaging our business and all the rest of it. They've since then cut a deal with YouTube to feature their clips on YouTube every day, because they saw that actually the clips were leading to higher viewership for all of their shows and higher ad revenues for them. So companies are slowly twigging that actually you can do this stuff and make money. It's not taking anything away from you, it's promoting what you're doing, if anything. But with this photograph, really shows the power. If I go, oh, this is again, you have something, and this is sort of offline, but you can do it with your computer now too. TiVo, Sky Plus, Channel 4 has a subscription service now. Where basically you don't have to be at home on your sofa on a Monday night at 8 o'clock to watch your favorite show. You can record it on your DVR, watch it when you want. And again, it's on your terms. It's media when you want it, how you want it. And it's just part of a larger trend of individual choice in not just technology, it's just in how people live their lives. But to go back to that photo that I showed you, tagging is something else that photo, Libertarian Triumph. If you look on the right-hand side, it's got loads of tags, which are essentially keywords, which says this photo is about. So this photo illustrates privatization, it illustrates the Belmont CTA station in Chicago, all these sorts of things, and other people can add tags as well. If you click through on any one of those tags, let's say you click through on privatization, it will show you all the other photos on that system which are tagged with privatization, which is a very good way of helping people to find similar material and find the things they're after. Search and discovery. This is, again, Technorati had the stats from before. If you look on the right-hand side of that page under the blue heading, you can see a snapshot at any given moment what the top tags are. And 2 days ago when I did this, Thanksgiving, everyone obviously saw the American bloggers, Turkey, Iraq, surprisingly. But this is a way, again, for not only for people to see what other people are talking about. You can actually do a search for yourself and see what people are saying about you, or plug a URL into the search box, and it'll tell you everyone who's linking to that URL. So it's a very good way to see who's linking to you and talking about you, or a topic. And this is another service called Blog Pulse, and they've got a tool on their site. Where basically, first you put in the search terms that you want to search for across all these blogs, and then you say, okay, it's going to produce a chart, what do I want to label this chart? And then you give it a date range. I want to track all the conversations. And for this example, I put in the words libertarian free market over the last, I think it was 6 months I chose. And it will just produce in 1 second this chart, which shows you conversations using that keyword over the last 6 months. And Antoine asked me, why is that huge spike? I have no idea. But something's looked into why there was a huge spike in July of people talking about libertarianism and free market. But you can see how this can be very, we talk about buzz and measuring buzz and this sort of stuff. This is sort of a PR guy's wet dream. Right, Tim? Search, this is an example of, again, we all use Google, we all use search engines. Rollio, it says roll your own search engine. It basically allows you to do searches across any combination of search sites that are out there. And there are lots of them. They're not just general ones like Google, but there are things called vertical search engines, which are sort of just travel search, or just automobile search, or just retail women's clothing search. You can actually go in there and sort of ticking boxes of which sources are your trusted ones that you want to search. Which is, again, something, it's all about the individual customizing it to what they want and not having restraints imposed upon them. Now this is just an example, and last night I was after the dinner and several drinks, I just had to go home and look up, actually, is anybody bidding on keywords that are related to libertarianism? Because on Google, Yahoo, search engines, you have where the red arrows are pointing. Those are things that people have actually paid, companies have actually paid to have there. They bid on certain keywords because they know what people are searching for. And if you're, let's say you're selling mortgages, offline it might cost you £300 to acquire a mortgage customer. Online, using search, if you can acquire one for, let's say, £25 for a click on a certain combination of keywords, it's a huge reduction. The ROI on that is massive. So here you can see people bid on the keywords cheap mortgage, low interest, CCJ. In the white area down below, that's also natural search results, which have just come up very naturally because of Google's algorithms, which tells it which sites are reliable. But when I looked to see who was bidding on Libertarian or on Brand, there was nobody bidding on those keywords. So if you imagine, if you had some budget and you wanted people to click through to your think tank or your research paper or whatever it was, you could actually do so by investing money and see very clearly what the return was on that. There was a recent study by Danicki, just to quote it, it's the most efficient marketing channel for customer acquisition, more than twice as efficient as the Yellow Pages, which is next best. And it costs twice as much to get a return on investment using Yellow Pages as does using search. So search is twice as good as the next, and with the Yellow Pages, people are going there with an intention. They're looking at a plumber because they need a plumber or something like that. So you would expect that to have quite a high ROI. But more effective than any online display ads, banner ads, email, direct mail, search is top of file. I used to work in marketing for the UK's largest search company, which is why I sort of know about this. Social book marketing is, this is an example from Tim's wife, Helen, her think tank, Nurses for Reform. Basically, there's lots of stories out there every day about how the NHS is failing, how doctors and nurses are pissed off. She simply would not have the time to blog about every single story that's out there, but she still wants to flag it up to people who read her website. So if you look at the top of the browser next to the address window, there's a little button that says tag. Whenever Helen is let's say on a Guardian article on the web, and she's actually, I'm going to flag this up for everyone, all she does is hit that tag button. And it's immediately added to this list, which anybody can access by going to this page, but it also feeds into her website on the sidebar. So once she hits that button, it's immediately on the sidebar of her website as a headline for people to click through to. And this is a great way, by the way, of it's searchable, it's accessible, it's permanent. There's another service called Pearl that does this, and when you actually flag something up, it saves a copy of that page permanently, which if you've ever bookmarked something and then try to go back to it 2 years later, it's gone. But with this, you can actually have permanent archives of things and snapshots that are always there and are searchable. So if you've ever, I think everyone's passed stories from friends, and you must read this via email, and everyone gets into this sort of, trying to find something in your email inbox 2 years after the fact, if it's still there. So this is a much more efficient, useful way of doing that. Syndication and fees. You've probably seen these symbols on lots of websites. The BBC has it on their every page on the BBC website. You can they have news feeds for it. Google News, if you do a search for Libertarian Alliance, you can create an email alert, but you can also create an RSS or other feed alert. And how do people actually view these RSS feeds? One way is you have what's called an RSS aggregator, an RSS reader, which is separate from your email, so it's no more sort of email cluttering. And actually, it tells you when your favorite sources have updated. So instead of clicking through all your bookmarks every day and having to manually check every page that you keep on top of, with RSS, it tells you when it's updated. So Loglines is one. You can do this with my Yahoo, my MSN, and other services like that. Okay. Going back to talking about RSS. As I was saying, a lot of people use RSS who don't realize they're using it. It's kind of like people don't know HTML, but they know websites. So it doesn't really matter what the technology is. It's all about how people are actually using it. So RSS saves you time, saves you effort. It's searchable. Again, you can go back and find things. Loads and loads of journalists use RSS feeds for their sources. It makes their job a hell of a lot easier. So if you're targeting media people, make it, I'm not going to touch on this, but make it easy. Make sure they can have an RSS feed of your updates. The other thing I'll say about RSS is that Microsoft is integrating it into every element of its next operating system. So Excel spreadsheets, Outlook calendars, everything. Basically, if somebody changes an Excel spreadsheet and you want to know about it, subscribe to an RSS feed for that spreadsheet. And when somebody goes in and changes a figure, it'll come up in your RSS reader saying this has been changed, here's the change, and you can actually go in to look at it. So when Microsoft rolls that out, it's going to take the adoption and the awareness of RSS up hugely. And if you're using Internet Explorer 7, which is available now, you will see every time you're on a website that has an RSS feed, the RSS thing lights up so that you know, oh, I can subscribe to updates for this. I don't have to keep coming back here to see what's changed. Wikis. Everyone sort of knows Wikipedia, I think. Online encyclopedia, which anybody can edit. In reality, most of the people who use Wikipedia never edit a page in their lives. Most of the editing, so 99% of the editing is done by something like 1% of the people who actually use it. Those aren't the actual figures, but it's something like that. Wikis are a very good way to store and change and collaborate on dynamic information. A lot of times, especially in companies, very static formats like Word, PowerPoint, email are used for dynamic information that will change often. So with wikis, it allows you to basically have, you can roll back to version control. If someone goes in and changes something, you think, no, the last version was better. Or if somebody goes in and puts loads of rubbish on it, you can very easily roll back to previous versions. It's, again, much more efficient, much more collaborative. And I think, well, why are people going in here and editing these things? People like to show off what they know, essentially. And sometimes people go in and edit their own, sometimes to make themselves look better, and invariably get found out for it. But this is the Libertarian Alliance's entry on Wikipedia. This is something called SourceWatch, which some interesting entries. If you put various people's names who are in this room into SourceWatch, what you find, but you can sort of see who's edited their own as well. But this is Sean Gabb's. I don't think Sean Gabb's edited his own. Yeah, I don't think he's edited his own. But basically, it's a way, and a lot of journalists and also just people in general can use this and say, okay, this study was done by. You mentioned something, so I thought maybe you did have something to do with it.
No, it's
This is who you are. Welcome to yourself.
It's a very good way of evaluating your sources, and if you find something out about a source, being able to make it available to other people. I mean, it talks about various think tanks and who funds them, and how transparent or opaque the funding is. It talks about individuals, about journalists, and conflicts of interest they might have in their reporting. So it's a very rich resource that anybody can take part in. And one of the great things about wikis is, again, the niche, the obscure topics. Something I couldn't embed into this PowerPoint is a very good web page. If you do a Google search for heavy metal umlaut, which is basically it's a brief video where with a voiceover, which shows you the Wikipedia page for heavy metal umlaut, which is the use of umlauts in heavy metal bands, logos, and names, which is pretty obscure. But there's such a comprehensive page about this, and it shows how it started out. It shows people going on there and putting lots of obscenities on, and 2 minutes later they came back off. And it basically shows how these things actually take form over time. So wikis are fantastic if you're, and even just in an office, having a list of who you order office supplies from, that changes. So being able to go in there, instead of sending out Word documents to everybody, and having to look for Word documents every time you want to find a list, This is a very good way of doing that. And this is just an example of people use wikis to pre-plan events now, especially technology events. And sort of, there'll be a wiki, and if you're coming to the event, sign up, put a bio, a link to your website, everyone can see who's coming. And you can also use the wiki to propose various sessions. And these are called unconferences, where they're basically trying to take this kind of format and flip it around, so that the wisdom that's in the crowd can actually have a little more visibility, and people can actually share in one another's knowledge, because, I mean, everybody that's out there knows more than whoever's up here together in general. So what people will do is they'll come to these conferences, and on the back of the wiki plan, have a whiteboard saying, okay, you know, here's what we're doing, having post-it notes, changing things on the fly, much more participatory. So people, you know, there are things called bar camps, where people, people into technology and things like that come, and you can only come if you're willing to give at least a 5-minute talk on something. Not to the entire room, but maybe in a corner somewhere saying, okay, I'm going to be leading a 5-minute thing on the use of wikis in think tanks. And anybody who's interested, come over and, you know, we'll talk. So you have to be willing to actually put something out there, which is another very, you know, it's another really interesting use of the offline consequences of using technology. Voice over IP, also called VoIP, which I think sounds horrible, but that's what people call it. Skype, you might be familiar with, is one of these programs where basically you can call anybody else who's a Skype user, and there are millions and millions of Skype users, for free. But they also offer either free or very cheap calls to landlines and mobiles as well. And Skype has done offers. In the States, I believe you can now call any landline. I believe you can call any landline in the States for free using Skype. They've done a similar offer in the UK, which I think was a limited time only. But I know the guy who runs Skype in the UK, and he said basically in no time at all calls to landlines on Skype will be free. And you think, okay, well, how can they do this? Because the software's free, joining is free, but they have lots of add-ons, such as they have something called Skype In, where they will basically assign you a landline number, and you choose which geographical area you want to make it look like your phone number is. So I have one that's in the 310 area code for Los Angeles, because I have a lot of business contacts there. So anybody who wants to call me on Skype, all they need to do is dial from their landline that number to reach me, and I pay for that, but it's very little. I think it's about £7 for 3 months or something like that. And so basically it's a way for people to communicate and have these distributed networks around the world, that they do take part in, you know, building companies, doing teamwork, all that sort of thing. And in the middle you have group chats, which can be recorded, have hundreds of people in there, be recorded and actually sort of participative podcasts. And it's a great way to evade telecoms companies, which is now why they're kicking up a fuss in the States and trying to block their users from using things like that. Virtual worlds and markets. Everyone knows eBay, and eBay bought Skype last year. Everyone knows eBay as a marketplace for, you know, finding stuff, buying stuff, selling stuff. It's been really instrumental. Even Bill Clinton has talked a lot about how eBay has brought about, you know, has created so many entrepreneurs in the States. People who have, you know, huge income sources now that previously they were just would have never had, because they never would have been able to do this so easily, so cheaply, connect with so many people. Zopa is a UK company which was founded by the same people who started Egg, the online bank. And it's sort of the eBay of money, where people who have money they want to lend to others go on Zopa, people who want to borrow money, and especially people who don't want to have anything to do with banks when it comes to lending. So they go on there and they hook up together. You can decide what rate you want to give people. If somebody went to your university and you want to give them a better rate than a guy that went to your rival university, you can do that. If it's a Mac user and you're a Mac head, you can give them a better, you know, if they're libertarian, give them a better rate. And it's basically just letting people come together in alternative marketplaces to do what they want to do. Zopa is just launched in the States as well in September, so they're really going quite global. And I would say this is avoiding the banking cartel, but not, as David Friedman seems to think, evading taxation, because that's not what this is about. Second Life, you've probably heard of Second Life. It's a role-playing game online. In October, they hit 1 million users, which they call residents. Lots of PR companies are going crazy, having product launches in Second Life. BBC had their summer party in Second Life, and all these sorts of things. But there's lots of private currency involved here. In Second Life, they have something called Linden dollars. Linden Labs is the company that created Second Life. But that private currency is actually worth quite a lot of money in the real world. And just to read a very brief example, there's a woman in China who basically has an online store in Second Life, which is worth $250,000 in US money. And to handle the rampant growth, she's just opened a 10-person studio and office in China, and says this virtual role-playing economy is so strong that it now has to import skill and services from the real-world economy. And all kids are sort of into this stuff now. So in the future, what's going to happen is just going to be really cool. And of course, Congress wants to see how they can get all the money out of it. So that's another battle. And this is just basically all of this, and this is something I borrowed from Adriana Lucas. This is a shift from a pipeline world of people just having things shoved down their gullets, and it's sort of two-way communication to networks. And everyone knows the power of networking, but this just makes it even more powerful for anybody to do next to no money. And when talking about companies and movements trying to take this stuff up, and this is what they call disruptive technology. A lot of this stuff is putting traditional business models out of business. Companies not happy about it, and I think this cartoon, you never try to sell media to a dinosaur or waste your time on a noisy dinosaur. A lot of dinosaurs are becoming extinct. And this is another cartoon that I think is important.
Sure.
This is, just to say, this is not all about the tools. The tools are almost incidental. The real interesting stuff is what you do with them and what happens offline as a consequence of using the tools. And I'm, not ending on a negative note, but if David Carr was here, I know he'd be putting his hand up and saying, but it's not a panacea. No, it's not a panacea. But it's how you use these things. There's a quote from Hugh Cloud, who actually drew this cartoon, and he said, everyone knows the maxim, a bad carpenter blames his tools. There should be another maxim. A bad carpenter thinks his shiny new tools are going to save his sorry ass from oblivion. So I think it's very important to be realistic about these things. And also, again, they are inherently individualistic because it's all about what individuals want. Driven by self-interest. Sir Martin Sorrell recently said that these people who are online using blogs are the most socialistic people in the world. I mean, he's got it completely wrong. He doesn't understand this is all driven by self-interest. This is not about the common good. That's just a byproduct of cool stuff's being created. And people, the alternative currencies involved, people who are blogging, podcasting, some people are making money out of it, but in general, they're being paid in other currencies such as attention, credibility, visibility, just basically showing off, having fun, personal career. And I just wanted to end by saying, if anybody was here and heard Jim last night talk about when he went to see Rand, when he discovered Rand, found that she was articulating things that he'd always believed, but never, we've all had that sort of experience when we've been reading things. I had that experience when I found blogs. When I found Sanda's Data, I found Natalie Solent, who's Barbara. Yeah, I mean, when I found these people online, a light just went off for me, and then I met them in real life. And it's, it's what happens offline that is where the really interesting stuff starts, and I think that there's a huge scope for making progress using this stuff before the movement. So.
Thank you.
We have only 10 minutes because we want to give you a bit of time for a lunch break. Antoine, you wanted to say something, and then we'll take a couple of questions.
Luckily, a lot of the groundwork has been laid out for me by Jackie. But what I want to talk about is something that, this is one of the most inspiring statements I heard about the end of the Cold War, which was actually by the gentleman at the back, when he launched Free Life as a, at the time, paper edition, and it later became a poster, which I have, and also Free Life, of course, has become the online journal of the Libertarian Alliance, and of course the comment system that Sean Gadd uses. But perhaps one of the things that's been most disappointing as libertarians is a lot of us had the kind of feeling that the Cold War was over, we won, that's it. I mean, what do we have to do now? And I think the problem we have is that it turns out that in fact freedom is something that has to be fought for permanently. And we have this from such a luminary as Eleanor Roosevelt. Incidentally, I found this quote from I did a search for libertarian quotes and came across a site that has over 1,500 quotes, and this was one of the ones near the top, and I thought this will do very nicely. What's gone wrong for the libertarian movement and the Republican Party in America in terms of free markets and so on, is that in fact the left have become extremely good within the last 2 years particularly at using the tools that Jackie is talking about to further their aims. And Daily Cause is one that I'm going to use as an example of something that a lot of free market groups have not done. This is the traffic for the last year of Daily Cause. Now remember, we were hearing that the Stockholm Network's annual survey found 22.5 million over the course of a year. Now admittedly that was 60% of the European free market movement. But if you look at that, that's what they're getting every month. And in fact, this is the shocking thing, 2 in every 3 Democrat voters a few weeks ago effectively visited that particular website. There are lots of people who talk about the mainstream media. The truth is, the mainstream media could not have existed, and I think the Democrats would have done exactly what they achieved this month. Because what's happened, the dark blue line is Instapundit, which is probably the most famous free market orientated blog. And if you look at it, you'll see that up till 2004, it was pretty strong. That red line is Daily Cause. And as you can see, since the last presidential election, they've moved up a gear, and we haven't. And I think that is perhaps symbolises where, if I was a Republican, that would be the message I would be saying. But what is interesting, this is of course a chart from Alexa, and I do have a problem with Alexa. That big brown line up there is Blogger. Blogger is Google's blogging software. Alexa can't tell the difference between my blog, AntoineClarke.blogspot.com, and a Chinese pet enthusiast writing about something. They're aggregated together. So all of us bloggers using blogger.com are muddled together in that big line up there. And Alexa can't measure that at the moment. It's actually very difficult for software to differentiate between it, partly because the URL is quite similar. The light blue one here, though, is WordPress, which is currently the hot, free blogging software. And you can see that that was rocketing in the last year, I would say. And
It just started last year.
yeah, it just started then. And by the way, the Drudge Report only shows up there and there. The rest of the time, it's off the radar altogether. And yet we hear that the Drudge Report is, the challenge to the mainstream media. So I think this gives you an idea. First of all, there are limits to using tools like Alexa to measure. And there's also that I think it does show that red line does show the improvement that the left have done. Now, the way they've done it, though, is that Daily Cause specifically uses a type of software called Scoop, which is kind of like using a Wikipedia as a blog. The idea is there are hundreds of people writing, but as people read the individual articles, they're effectively voting for that article to stay up. And the ones that don't get much readership fade away. The result is that you have a massive number of people taking part in it. You have an even bigger number of people reading. and you create an online community of political debate. And I would strongly suggest anyone interested in political fundraising, for example, to look at what COS did over the past year in terms of targeting elections locally and raising money that was distributed locally. And in fact, the Democratic Party nationally, to their credit, in the last few weeks of the campaign, actually followed where COS said put the money, they went and put theirs. And I think that perhaps suggests to me one of the reasons why the US Democrats have done very well this year. Now, The Long Tail is a book by Chris Anderson. I would suggest to you that if anyone is interested in economics and in pushing ideas, if there's one book you read in the next year, this is the one to read. And The Long Tail is basically about the idea a normal shop carries this volume of inventory. They're going to sell the ones that can shift. What the digital economy means is you can make almost exactly the same profit selling a low-selling book as selling a bestseller, which is a complete reversal of the situation. Here are book sales in 2004. The shocking figure is that you could sell 17 million of the books that sold 1 million each, but you can sell 14 million if you were only selling the ones that sold less than 100 copies each. And if you've got a distribution channel that makes no particular difference between selling a crate of books and selling an individual one, then the whole economy of book selling, this is just one example, has completely changed. And by the way, if you're thinking of the Libertarian Alliance, which has 700 publications, the economics of keeping every Libertarian Alliance publication available online, it makes sense in a way that it does not do for a think tank that's only got a few books and it costs them nearly £100 to put one out. So the 3 rules of long-tail marketing are make everything available, cut the price in half and lower it. And by the way, both of these are things the Libertarian Alliance has done. Help me find it. That's the one that's a bit more problematic. And I think that's where what Jackie was talking about tells you what is working. Now, it isn't all one-way traffic. Guido Fawkes, many of you will know, is Paul Staines, a libertarian student activist from years past. Frankly, a loose cannon to say the least, as I think the CNE has found out recently. But Guido Fawkes, great iconography, and of course putting across in a well, not always subtle way, but quite often he's making subtle libertarian points. Now the question is, do you think that look at the number of hits from the various institutions. The Houses of Parliament, 18,000 visits to Guido Fawkes' website. The Conservative Party Central Office, 7,600. The Labour Party, very few. But the BBC, nearly 3,000. I think these people know who their threat is. Now the tools are all ready, and I've listed them here. If anyone wants to talk about them, talk to Jackie or me. But basically, the cost of setting up something like Guido Fawkes is virtually nil. In fact, I happen to know Guido Fawkes uses free software for his actual blog. He actually uses Blogger, which most techies don't like because they think it breaks down all the time. But the fact is, it's completely free. Almost everything else there is free, and you can actually set it up, from in your kitchen. And finally, I want to look at one aspect of Second Life. The first thing I did when I looked at the website was see an advert, buy land now. And there's something that tells you that these kind of games, of course, are going to, in a subversive way, create, people are going to get used to the idea of not going through the state of things. And finally, a campaigning tool. This is Pledge Bank. Now, some of you will know that there was a campaign to organise a petition against national identity cards, and the target was to raise £100,000 from 10,000 people in 4 months. It took them 42 days using Pledge Bank. And what happened is the word got out into the mainstream media and into the blogs, and people just signed up. And what they signed up for is that when the law's actually passed, each person who signed that has agreed to give £10 to a defence fund and to not carry an identity card. Now, mobilisations like that are open to anyone. It's completely free to set it up. And what is, I think, a wild problem is perhaps the left have been very quick to pick up on these tools, perhaps because they got the idea of social networking, perhaps they're more used to the idea. But this is something we could do just as easy as them. And last point I'm going to make, this is how I work. I'm the international editor of a pharmaceutical magazine. In January, roughly a third of all my story leads came from press releases. Now, I didn't always just run the press release, but, oh, something's happening, I'm going to write about it. About a third of it was cuttings from other newspapers. As everyone in the media knows, we all follow the herd. A tiny number was RSS feeds, and a lot of it was time. I spent hours every day looking at individual websites. Has the Heritage Foundation published anything? No. Okay. Has the Department of Health? No. And I'd spend hours doing that. Now in October, 2/3 of my leads come from RSS feeds, which I don't have to spend anything like the amount of time that I had on these. And virtually none come from websites. In fact, I don't have the time to go looking at individual websites. And so as a result, in the last month, I've used material from the Fraser Institute, which is in Canada, the Globalization Institute, the Heartland Institute in Chicago, and Institute Molinari, which is in Brussels. I have not used the American Enterprise Institute, despite the fact it's fantastic, but I don't have the time to plough through their website to see if anything they're doing is relevant. The IEA is another one, CNE is another one, sadly, and the Stockholm Network. Now, the point is, whatever hits you're getting, you will just step up a gear if you make it easy to find. And that is my final message. Thank
you. We may have the time for one question and one only. And I saw Tom first. So you have one question.
Because we want to get some lunch. Speaking with my day job hat on as a Reuters journalist, authorised by a photo shop, can I ask, what do you think, broadly speaking, is going to be the most important impact on the media from what you're talking about here today? What do you think is the real big lesson to take out of this?
Two things. I think, one, Perry has often made this comment about Sam's data and blogs and saying, we're probably not going to eliminate the mainstream media, and that's not necessarily what anybody's trying to do, but it's changing the way that people read the mainstream media or view mainstream TV news or look at the BBC or something like that. I think the important thing is how people, I hate the word consume, because now people are they're not consuming this stuff, but how people actually read mainstream media things. And much less passive, questioning things. In the States, primarily, they still believe the myth of objectivity and being unbiased, which is clearly twaddle. And I think in the States, there's going to be a huge impact of actually saying, you know what, let's lay our backgrounds, our biases on the table, and let people make up their own minds about whether or not they think we're being. So I think for me, it's actually how people use the media and what level of trustworthiness they have with it.
Two quick thoughts. Guido Fawkes, one of the ways he works is that the journalist has a story which his editor won't let him run because it might be libelous. So an anonymous phone call, sometimes using Skype, is made to Guido Fawkes, who gets this information. He then puts it on his blog because he's not frightened of libel in the way that a newspaper might be. And then the newspaper can then run the story as Guido Fawkes is saying this. So that's one dynamic that journalists are going to like. So journalists can feel threatened by this, but they can use it as well. So that's one useful thing. The second change is going to be that the second last slide I showed with the RSS feeds. There's going to be it's going to make the job of a journalist in some respects easier. What I didn't show was Technorati's search for particular themes. I shocked someone in the drug industry by showing them what they could do with a product name. They put a product name search. They could get within a minute what someone has blogged. They can actually get ahead of the mainstream media. So if they're worried about, if there's a report that some drug is killing people, they can find out about it before it's actually in the news, which is a very pleasant thing for a PR person to do, I can tell you. And that, of course, is going to change everything. Of course, the media can do this too, but the speed with which people can get information, word of mouth, is just phenomenal. And it's global. I mean, that could happen in China, and I could hear about it in a minute or two.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It was a very exciting talk, and I learned a lot of things, actually, things that I didn't know about blogs and things like this, and yet I spent a lot of time looking at things on the internet and so on. We want to start the next session at 2:30, so in other words, it gives you 75 minutes for lunch. But before you go, I would like to remind you that the Libertarian Alliance has started a blog, its own blog, at libertarian.blogspot.com.
Libertarian Alliance blog.
Libertarian Alliance, that's right.
LibertarianAllianceblog.com.
Or lablog.com.
Or LA.com.
lablog.com, that's right. That's easier to remember. lablog.com. Okay, and see you in 75